The club season coming to an end rather soon, and the World Cup being this summer, I thought it was a good time to start evaluating some of the potential rosters that we could see each national team show up with. And the perfect place for me to start with that would be the England national team. Now, I'm going to start by saying that this national team is absolutely loaded with talent. There are going to be a lot of guys who deserve to be on this roster that are not going to play in the tournament. And that's just the harsh reality of it. Thomas Tuchel has a very difficult job on his hands um, picking this roster. And I think there are a lot of metrics that play into it. I am not in Thomas Tuchel's position. I am actually, believe it or not Thomas Tuchel himself. I don't know what he values over other things. But this is the lineup I would take to the World Cup in the United States in 2026 if I were Thomas Tuchel. Now, I want to start by laying out the expectations for this England team because every England fan should be expecting to see this team win the World Cup. It is about time that England got over the hump and found a way to produce a seriously impressive campaign or an impressive tournament and bring home some gold for the first time in a very, very long time. But with teams like France and Spain still being just as good as they are, Germany even as well, I don't think that that is likely to happen. I think England are going to, as always, be let down by something in the latter stages. I think if they run into France or Spain or Germany early, we could see this team fall out. Now, of course, a lot of that would play into the draw, and I cannot predict how everything's going to shake out. But I would say that the very lowest this team should be finding themselves is in the semifinal of the World Cup. And that's just simply the fact that we've seen this England team play very, very badly and still get to that exact position. We saw it at the Euro. They ended up going to the final, and they didn't really have that great of a tournament. It was moments of individual brilliance. Think back to Bellingham against Slovenia and Bukayo Saka against Switzerland. Those are the moments that led this England team to finding themselves in the final, I think, to the World Cup in 22. They were much better in that tournament than the Euro, but they still fell short to France, who were a brilliant side. So I don't. I think on paper they might be one of the most stacked, if not the most stacked, rosters there is. I just don't know if it'll translate. But that takes us into the actual choosing of the roster. Now, I didn't just list the guys I would be taking to the tournament. I've also listed some of the guys who are like the first options outside. So situations where maybe this guy makes it, I'm not sure. But these are the guys I would take. Now, quickly, just want to add that this is assuming everyone at the time is fit. That is just because ideally everyone is fit. So that is the way that I've gone about this is assuming that all of the players who England could take to the World Cup are fit and healthy and ready to play. So 26 roster spots, 3 goalkeepers. Jordan Pickford is going to be the number one, so there's no doubt in my mind that Jordan Pickford should be on that plane. The next is actually an interesting one when you consider how much value you would tend to put on playing time at the club level. I've gone James Trafford now. Not only because James Trafford is a very, very good goalkeeper who found himself in a very unfortunate situation. He was meant to come in and be City's one, but City saw the opportunity to bring in Gianluigi Donnarumma. Of course, they had to take that, so he now sits as the number 2 at Man City, but the way I see it, you have to take James Trafford because he is going to be your number 1, probably at the next Euro. I don't see Pickford continuing to... I think this is Pickford's last major tournament with England, and so you have to gear up James Trafford at some point. Now, that third keeper... I've gone with Dean Henderson. I think he's been the best of the other options, being the first 2 out, Nick Pope and Aaron Ramsdale, who have battled for time. Ramsdale's only made 10 Premier League appearances, but he's started every game at this point. Now he's starting every game for Newcastle. He played both legs against Barcelona. He has played the vast majority of the last couple of Prem games. And Nick Pope has struggled, but Pope played the majority of the season. But I just don't think either of those guys are going to be able to edge out Dean Henderson, who is put on a very strong campaign once again for Crystal Palace. Obviously, a little bit of a slower pace than last year. He was really, really strong last year in their FA Cup run and in their late Premier League push. But Yeah, I think Dean Henderson is going to be the third keeper. The third choice keeper is never actually going to play in this tournament. It's really obviously unlikely that James Trafford even plays this tournament. So that is the three keepers I would select. If Ramsdale makes it, it wouldn't necessarily surprise me. It would surprise me if Pope did, considering I imagine he doesn't play very much during the last fourth of this season. That moves us into the right backs. Now, this was a very difficult decision for me in the entire selection. Now, obviously, assuming that he is fit, Reece James will be starting at right back for this national team. That is almost a given at this point. Can you rely on him to be fit? That's a completely different question. But I imagine that Reece James will be part of this England squad and he's starting right back. I'm only taking one other right back, and it is Tino Livramento, who has been superb again for Newcastle. I thought he was really good last year as well. He's seen several England call-ups. He's part of the roster this time around, and Trent Alexander is not. It is very strange to leave Trent Alexander-Arnold off of this roster, because I do think that a player with that much talent, he should always be in the squad. Now, he's really struggled with injuries. He's not gotten back into the team since being fit. And quite frankly, it was just, he's not going to start over Reece James at right back, and I think he makes them worse at right back if he starts. So then you want to move him into midfield, but there's too many good defensive midfielders who strengthen this England team. I just don't think he fits the national level. If they were playing a three-back and he was a right wing-back, I think he would probably start every game. But they just probably aren't going to do that. I imagine they line up in a 4-2-3-1. I know Thomas Tuchel's liked to play a back five or back three in previous years. You think back to that Chelsea team that he won the Champions League with, that was a back five. But I just don't think it's really going to work at the international level, and there's too many good attacking players in this England team to play a formation like that. And because of that, I think Trent Alexander-Arnold is going to have to be left out of the squad. I just don't see a place, and there's no point. I don't see a place for him to be in the team, and there's no point in giving him a roster spot if there's nowhere he fits into the team. The other right backs I'm leaving out are Jed Spence, which I think that's actually a bit harsh. He can play both the left and the right side, similar to Tino Livramento. But I just think Livramento is a bit better. I think he is better going forward. I've seen Spence has been fantastic defensively at multiple points throughout the season. He struggled a bit now. Spurs are almost completely in the mud at this point, battling relegation, and he hasn't even really been in the team as of late. But I just don't think it's that likely that he beats out Tino Livramento, and then Kieran Trippier, who I thought deserved a mention because he's been part of this England team for so long, but there's just better players than he now, and that's how it's worked out for him. So, yeah, I'd take James and Livramento, and I think it's really harsh on Trent Alexander-Arnold, but I think at the end of the day, Livramento benefits this style of England play more than Trent Alexander-Arnold does. Now, the center halves was another really tough one. I think Marc Guéhi and Ezri Konsa are absolutely locked into this team. I think Guéhi will start, and then I think Konsa will battle with Fikayo Tomori as to who starts as that other right-sided center half. My worry about Konsa and Guéhi starting together is that you would really lack size. And with Declan Rice and Bukayo Saka taking your corners, you need someone to be a threat in the box on set pieces, because they are very, very good at it, delivering great balls. And so you need someone to be a weapon in the box. That's why I would be taking Fikayo Tomori, and I'd be taking Harry Maguire. And I know that there are probably some better center halves that are not going to go than Harry Maguire. But I think Maguire brings a natural leadership to this side. I think he has been reliable for England in every single time he's put on the shirt, and I think it's just good to have his presence in the locker room, especially when you're not going to take a guy like John Stones, who's my first one out. Stones has only played 7 Premier League games this season. I just don't see any way that he is trusted. And I know he made the recent roster for the friendlies, but you're just not going to convince me that it is worth bringing John Stones when he just has not played football. And Maguire is playing more for Man United, and Tomori has started almost every game for AC Milan, and Konsa and Guéhi are starting. Guéhi's starting over John Stones at Manchester City. So that was tough to not bring John Stones, and it was also tough to not bring Dan Burn, who I think would be the perfect option as a set piece beacon, being the fact that he's like 6'7". And I think again he's part of this current roster, and I think he is really unfortunate not to be going. But you just need rocks at the back, and Gahey and Konsa and Tamori are just all better than he is. And Maguire brings the aspect of locker room presence that I think is going to benefit England. And when you have guys that probably aren't going to play, like whoever that fourth center back is, whether it's Maguire or Stones or Dan Burn, they're not going to play. So you have to think about, okay, who's going to be important to have on the roster, who's going to be. I think the term the U.S. men's national team uses is vibe guys. I don't know what the term in the European rosters are, but yeah, you just need the guys that is going to be a voice in the changing room. You're going to need guys that can bring positive energy and impact the squad without being on the pitch. And I think that's what Harry Maguire does. I think that's why he gets the edge. But I did want to bring a shout out to Jared Branthwaite of Everton, who I think is very talented center half, but he's just not better than the four above him. And Ben White, who hasn't played a lot of Premier League football, hasn't really played a lot of football as of late to begin with, but he was just called up to this roster after Jarrell Quansah had to drop out. That's another guy who I could potentially see there, but I just don't think he's better than the four that I've taken. And Ben White also brings that versatility similar to Dan Burn. They can play outside as well as through the middle. But it just kind of works out that, Konsa and Tamori are better center halves, and there's no way they're not bringing Mark Gahey. To complete the defense, at left back, I would be bringing Lewis Hall and Nico O'Reilly. We saw Nico O'Reilly have a fantastic game in the Carabao Cup final against Arsenal. He scored the brace to win Man City the tie. And then Lewis Hall has been superb again for Newcastle this season. I think this is probably the easiest selection in terms of positions, the easiest selection of the lot. Those two are absolutely going to be the ones that are playing in that left back position. The only contest, Miles Lewis-Skelly hasn't even really played much football at all in the last few months. There's no way they're going to take him, even though I think he's extremely talented. And then Luke Shaw is just kind of been phased out of this England team. Cannot stay fit. Has struggled to play a lot of minutes. Although he is another guy who's always been reliable for England when he's put on the shirt. So if he's fit, I guess there certainly is a chance that he sneaks in to the roster. But I would be surprised if he was there. Now, that takes us to the midfield, where the first name in that section is Declan Rice. There's no doubt about it. He will be not only starting, but one of the key players to this England squad. After that, Elliot Anderson and Adam Wharton, who I think will be starting next to Declan Rice, one of the two of them. Both of them are just absolutely superb. Elliot Anderson is just totally class. He's a very solid ball-winning midfielder, keeps the possession well, can control tempos of the game. Adam Wharton is very similar in that style, very good at winning the ball, and his weight of pass is absolutely superb. And then, I actually don't know. I would certainly bring a fourth defensive midfielder, but I cannot decide which of these three I would take, in the sense that they all bring something very different to the squad. Now, if you still feel like you need an extra locker room presence, Jordan Henderson is the guy. That is going to bother a lot of people. But he has been very solid for Brentford. He, again, brings that level-headed composure, voice of the locker room, voice of reason. I mean, he was Liverpool's captain for, goodness, like 6 to 8 years, something like that. He is that voice of reason. He is a pure leader, and I think he would be great to have, especially when none of these three are actually going to touch the field, I don't think. But his competition would be James Gardner of Everton, who is so incredibly solid defensively. He is not afraid to take the game by the scruff of the neck, go get stuck in, and he's just been having a very good season for a rather overperforming Everton team. And I think that he certainly deserves to be in the conversation. Now, I think he's the least likely of these three to go. I think they would lean on Henderson's experience ahead of him, and then I think they'd lean on the talent of Kobbie Mainoo ahead of him as well, because Kobbie Mainoo is absolutely the most creative of these three. I think he probably is the best player of the three, and now he's playing more minutes at Manchester United. Um, he was phenomenal at the Euro in 2024. He was really good at that tournament. I think maybe Kobbie Mainoo sneaks in ahead of Jordan Henderson for this tournament, but I'm just not sure because his profile, I like him a lot in this scenario because his profile is so different to Wharton and Anderson, but he's not going to play ahead of Declan Rice. And at that point, it really is going to come down to what Thomas Tuchel depends more on. Does he want the experience and the leadership of Jordan Henderson, or does he want the youth and the energy of Kobbie Mainoo? I would lean on taking Kobbie Mainoo. I've already leaned on the experience with Maguire, and I would totally understand if he took Jordan Henderson, but Kobbie Mainoo, there are certain situations where you think this game needs Kobbie Mainoo, and there's not going to be a lot of games where you sit in there and go, this game needs Jordan Henderson. As for the attacking midfielders, this is one that was a little bit strange because I have it written down as one of these. I mean, I'll just start. Jude Bellingham is absolutely going to be this team's starting number 10. There's no doubt about it. I know there are a lot of people who are very critical of Jude Bellingham's play this season. The moments like Slovenia bicycle kick in the 90th minute, those are the reasons you take Jude Bellingham. The individual brilliance of a guy like that, there's no doubt that he is in this team. Cole Palmer is the next. I don't think Cole Palmer is going to start. I don't really see him he's not going to start over Jude Bellingham as a 10, and I don't think he's going to start over Bukayo Saka on the right wing. And I know a lot of people have been extremely critical of Bukayo Saka's play this season, and rightfully so. He's had a down year. But my point to you is that World Cup 2022 and Euro 2024, Bukayo Saka was the best player to wear the England shirt in both of those tournaments. So I think there's no doubt that Saka is going to continue to start on that right side. But Palmer absolutely has to be in the team. He was phenomenal when he came off the bench. He scored, obviously, in the Euro final, and he created the goal to send them to the final when he played Ollie Watkins in behind. So I think there's no doubt that he will be there. But I also put Morgan Rogers in this category. And actually, thinking about it now, I think Morgan Rogers will probably start off the left side. That's where I would play him anyway. So it's kind of funny that I put him as an attacking midfielder when really he's probably going to start as a winger, in my opinion. But Morgan Rogers has to be there. He's very dynamic. He's very different to these other number 10s in the sense that he likes to get on the ball and run. He is a ball carrier rather than a creator. But he is very dynamic. He is a great finisher as well. I think there's a lot of things that Morgan Rogers offers his team that will severely help them. And then the last number 10 I'm taking is Arabi Eze, who hasn't quite done the same numbers as people were expecting him to do at Arsenal. But I think the profile, very, very creative. He just has the ability to, when you need a goal, he pops up. Eze scores big goals. And honestly, I don't think he'll play very many minutes at this tournament when he goes, or if he goes. But honestly, there aren't really that many other attacking midfielders to take anyway. The only other options would be Morgan Gibbs-White, who has had quite the down year for Nottingham Forest, and then Conor Gallagher is the only other one I could think of, and he absolutely is not going. So I think Eze fits a profile that England don't have. Could be useful. I don't reckon he plays very much, however. The wingers, like I've already mentioned, Bukayo Saka will probably be starting on the right-hand side. He has been England's best player at their last two tournaments. There's very little else to say about him, even if he's been having a bad year. Noni Madueke will probably make this roster just because he is so direct. And Thomas Tuchel seems to be a very big fan of Noni Madueke. Also, when Bukayo Saka was hurt, he was one of England's better players in the friendlies they had been playing because of that direct style of play. I think it suits the international game well. Phil Foden is going to be, I have him classed as a winger rather than attacking midfielder. Maybe I should have switched him and Morgan Rogers. But the thing about Foden is I just don't see him playing at this tournament because he's not better than Bellingham or Palmer, and he struggled a lot at the last Euro as a winger. He fits as a winger in Pep Guardiola's system because the wingers were very narrow, and now that Pep has actually altered to more direct wingers in Semenyo and Doku, he's moved back into the middle of the park, where I think he's been better this season. And I think that he's certainly put himself back into being 100% part of this team. And I just don't know how much of an impact he's going to have playing in this different system. And then finally, the other two I'm taking are Marcus Rashford of Barcelona and Anthony Gordon of Newcastle. Gordon has been very, very good, especially in the back part of the year. I think his directness and his willingness to just run his socks off make him a very viable option on that left-hand side. But then Marcus Rashford he just has that X factor about him. He's not really played as much down the stretch this season for Barcelona as I would have thought after such a hot start, but Marcus Rashford just feels like someone that would be really silly to leave off this roster. We've seen him perform at very high levels for England, and honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if he's the one starting on that left-hand side, regardless of what you think about him. That means that Jack Grealish, Harvey Barnes, and Jared Bowen would be the wingers off the list. I think Jared Bowen not going would be rather harsh. He has been one of West Ham's only really great players this season. Jack Grealish started really well for Everton. He's not even really playing minutes anymore. And then Harvey Barnes, that's another really rough one to leave off because he's been very good for Newcastle, especially in their run early in the year where they were firing on all four fronts in the big competitions, but they've really started to slip up now. Not that that has anything to do with Harvey Barnes, but I just don't see him getting the nod over guys like Foden, Rashford, or Gordon. Then finally, the last two spots, I'm only bringing two strikers. There was a tough conversation here. Obviously, Harry Kane will start and probably play just about every minute. I would like to see Harry Kane have a much better tournament at the World Cup than he did the Euro. I thought he was really, really poor at the Euros. Not that it was directly his fault. I think there's a lot of expectation on Harry Kane to be the top scorer at every tournament England play. Obviously the likelihood is that's going to happen. But this last tournament, it felt like Kane was trying to play his game, drop deep, get the ball, find your wingers to run. But the wingers that are in this England team don't really like to do that. Bukayo Saka obviously would rather be the one driving the ball forward. He wants the ball at his feet, and then Phil Foden was inverting, not getting him behind, and it just left Harry Kane looking quite silly, consistently being in the midfield and having no one up front and then having no one to play the ball to. This time around, there are options to run. Marcus Rashford, Anthony Gordon, Noni Madueke. If those guys, Morgan Rogers as well, if those guys or one of those guys is off the left wing, that opens the space for Kane to do the things he used to do with Heung-min Son, the things he's been doing with Luis Diaz and Michael Olise. So I think there certainly is a better situation here around Harry Kane for him to play his game, but I think at some point he's going to have to just be the poacher that England need, find a way to score the big goals, and we know Harry Kane can do that. And it's going to be about, can Kane show up in the big, big matches? When they play France, when they play Spain, when they play Argentina, if they end up playing in Germany, when they play one of these big nations, can Kane provide something special? Because we haven't seen him do that at big tournaments, and that has been the biggest knock on his entire career, is that he has not been able to produce big performances in big matches. But obviously, he's going to be England's starting number 9. He's England's all-time top goal scorer. There's no doubt about it. And then the other striker was tough, because I think Dominic Calvert-Lewin absolutely has a case. But I just back Ollie Watkins more. I know Ollie Watkins has struggled a little bit. He only has one less goal than Calvert-Lewin on the season in the Premier League. And I just think that Watkins proving it at the Euro when he scored the goal that sent them beyond the Dutch into the final, I think that moment is going to keep him in the squad, even though Dominic Calvert-Lewin absolutely deserves a shot. We'll see what Calvert-Lewin looks like in these friendlies, see if he plays any minutes and gets a chance to prove himself. But the only other strikers I think could make it into the squad would be Dominic Solanke and Ivan Toney. I think Ivan Toney is really almost out of the race at this point. They would rather opt for the Premier League striker than the one playing in Saudi Arabia. And then Dominic Solanke, he's been all right. As of late, he scored that wonder goal against City, but it just isn't very likely that he gets in over these other two. So that is where I would leave England's roster, the 26. Pickford, Trafford, Henderson, James and Livramento, Gahey, Konsa, Maguire, Tamori, Lewis Hall, Nico O'Reilly, Declan Rice, Elliot Anderson, Adam Wharton, Kobbie Mainoo, Jude Bellingham, Morgan Rogers, Cole Palmer, Eric Bichi Eze, Bukayo Saka, Noni Madueke, Phil Foden, Marcus Rashford, Anthony Gordon, Harry Kane, and Ollie Watkins. Now, in terms of how that team should line up, I think, again, like I said, a 4-2-3-1. I would go Pickford as your one, Reece James next to probably Fikayo Tomori, with Gahey to his left, and I would start Nico O'Reilly as the left back. Declan Rice playing a double pivot, if you will, with Elliot Anderson or Adam Wharton, but I'd probably lean on Elliot Anderson. Ahead of them, Jude Bellingham, to the right of him, Bukayo Saka. The left winger is the biggest question mark of this team. Like I said, I think my favorite is Morgan Rogers, but I would not be surprised if it's Marcus Rashford. I would not be surprised if it's Anthony Gordon, with Harry Kane, the captain, as the number 9. And then I think you have Cole Palmer and Phil Foden, Marcus Rashford, Adam Wharton to all make big impacts. Lewis Hall can make an impact off that bench. Tino Livramento. I think you have guys off the bench that will make impacts, and Cole Palmer being the highlight of those lot, as well as Phil Foden. But that is the roster I would take for England's World Cup 2026. There are, like I said, a lot of guys that would feel hard done by not being in that squad, but it is just so tough. I mean, I haven't even mentioned a guy like Angel Gomes, who has been very, very good this season. Since moving to the Premier League, he is a very different profile, but he just isn't better than any of the 10s that are already going. So, like I said, this is probably the largest selection and the hardest selection to make for a roster, and I think there are very few bad decisions that Thomas Tuchel can make. I think the bad decisions would come more so in the lineup and in the style of play than the actual roster selections. And you have to remember that not every roster selection, not every guy that makes this roster is there because they offer something on the pitch. Guys like Maguire, guys like Henderson are going to offer something in the changing room. So that is the squad I would take to the 2026 World Cup if I were Thomas Tuchel. Please feel free to let me know what you would do differently, what guys did I either leave off that you think should be on, or what guys did I not even mention. Let me know what you all think. Yeah, that is it for this episode of the Shook Sports Take podcast. Feel free to subscribe and leave a like, and have a blessed day.